People on here should hopefully know us and who we are, but do you want to introduce yourself first, Emily?
Yeah, sure. So obviously I'm Emily. I've been at Precision 5 years, work data science roles and data analytics roles with Joel at Precision.
And I've been here for 12 years, starting to look a bit older now. And obviously over the 12 years, we've seen a lot of change in the data market. But I think the key theme for today's presentation is going to be, it's never been like it is now. I don't think it's ever been like it will be for the next, year ahead as well. We don't expect so much change, but obviously that's what we're here to share with everyone today. So we do a talent survey every year. We present it back to the market every year, and this year has kind of had some big things happening that we need to share with you that are more important than anything, and we'll get straight into it now. So what we're going to go through. So we've got a bit of context as to who it is, and what it is, who the people are that we profiled. Then we go into job functions, key topics at the moment in the market around attraction and retention. There's not too many surprises there. Where it gets spicy is we start getting into the remuneration side of things, and the flexibility side of things as well. We've got the opportunity on the right hand side for everyone who is within the webinar to ask questions. We would normally say ask questions at the end, but we thought today we'd try and make it as interactive as possible. And the good news is Kitty has already told us that you can see both of us, so we're glad that you can see us even if we can't see ourselves. So please pop your questions in there on the right as we go, because we'd love for you to get involved in the presentation. If we don't get through it all and there's more questions at the end, obviously Emily and I are 100% available. In terms of the context, I think I've already mentioned it mainly, but we try and input our own insights into this. We've got 7 data recruiters, soon to be 8 at Precision Sourcing now. Obviously, it's a vastly growing area. We speak to thousands of candidates every month, thousands of clients every year. So whilst we've got the data, we do try and input some of our own thoughts in there. The big caveat being, we do apologize, obviously we aren't data analysts and data visualization specialists, so whilst we do our best with our graphs, they're not going to be maybe the high standard that you're used to. But anyway, let's get into it. So no major changes here this year, Emily. The permanent and the contract side of things have stayed about the same.
No, I think there's just obviously that fixed term piece that is obvious is not a good thing to be looking at if you're hiring in the market, which is nice to see because we preach about it, but now there's data behind it.
Yeah, and there's some more data later on around what kind of roles people want. But yeah, fixed term is definitely the bottom end of the market at the moment because as with lowest unemployment, it's been a very long time. Most people are in roles and most day rate contractors are day rate contractors. The key thing on the right there is that we've seen the market mature slightly. So up until last year, the bulk of the market was in that kind of 5 to 10 years experience. We're now starting to see people, obviously as markets grow and develop, more people in that 10 to 20 years and 20 years plus within the data market. So it's definitely a maturing market. And one of the issues that we'll talk about a little bit today is that we don't have the same influx of students coming in because of everything that's been happening in the last 2 or 3 years, and that's affecting the market as well. No surprises always. Most likely, if you're a contractor, you're going to have been in the market for a little bit longer. Usually contractors are people who are a bit more sure of their skills and sure of who they are. And then on the right here, just a quick profile of the backgrounds of where people come from. Obviously, it's a super diverse country, Australia. But the key thing here, just popping that in there, we've got quite a lot of word clouds during the presentation today, and words only show up in that cloud if they've been mentioned at least 3 times. So whilst someone might be sat here thinking, I don't know, hey, I've come from Mexico, why am I not showing up there? And I filled in the survey, it might be that you're the only person from Mexico, as an example. That's the boring stuff out of the way. Now we're getting into some of the more interesting thing. And I think I'll go to you here first, Emily. Is your small slice of the pie, data science, has been shrinking, which is weird in a way.
Yeah, it is weird. We were kind of talking about that the other day, and I think what I've maybe been seeing, and maybe this is the reason for the small slice decreasing in size, is that people are now feeling more comfortable in calling themselves like, I don't know, data insights analyst or something else that actually means that you are drawing on data science, but you're not a fully fledged data scientist. So this is just my interpretation of it, but yeah, it might be just I suppose the market is understanding if you are calling yourself a data scientist now, it's really important that you are a data scientist by trade and not just calling yourself it for the sake of it being a cool buzzword.
Yeah, we saw everyone start calling themselves data scientists, and then, as you said, the market's changed, which I think is a really good thing. People are much more comfortable in the data market now, knowing that you can, be a specialist in a lot of different things, not just data science. One of the key things that we've seen here is the amount of people in management roles. Now, obviously, we're in a maturing market, and this is something that generally needs to be watched. It's not something that an individual company can necessarily change, but if 1 in 4.5 people are in management positions, it obviously suggests that the average data team size is around 4.5 people. Obviously, there's going to be people managing teams of 300, but within that, you're going to have managers under them and managers under them. We're going to get into a slide later that talks about what the aspirations of data professionals are, and we are going to have, it looks like, a slight issue with more people wanting to get into management roles than there are going to be. And it also talks to, and something we'll talk about later, Emily, around salaries for mid-level people are ballooning, and whilst they're going up for senior people, they're not going up the same. And we've even started hearing stories of managers having to bring in data engineers and developers on salaries higher than them just because they need the projects done, because the demand is in that middle section. The other thing with this pie chart as well, the data strategist was something that was growing over the last few years. We've seen a big shrinking in the data strategist job title in the market. We only had 4 respondents this time, so we're going to take that job title off next year. And we were discussing this, Emily, and we think that's because that job is being rolled into more of the senior leadership positions.
Yes, and I think we're talking about like business analysts and like technical business analysts, but sort of having that blend of business facing and being able to do the job. So it's kind of falling into different categories, I suppose, and maybe it's just not a common title now. It's been phased out.
Exactly. I mean, the majority of projects that are being kicked off in most companies these days are either digital or data, and those strategies are being developed by exec leadership teams and senior leadership teams, whereas before that might have been a specific data strategist doing it. And then, like you said, exactly, the delivery slice of that pie is getting bigger now with project managers and business analysts. So we're definitely seeing a shifting of skills and more people entering the data market with more business facing skills. So it'll be interesting to see if it makes a comeback in the next few years. Right, really important here. I'll go to you first with this one, Emily, on this word cloud. No surprises, and salary is not a dirty word, eh?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, no one will be shocked at this. Like, it is always, when it comes down to it, salary that is the most important driver. It just always comes down to it, even when you say it's not, it is, because it comes to a deciding point and you're deciding based on salary, because it's quite hard to, I suppose, decide between opportunities and things like that. So that's obvious. Flexibility, work-life balance, obviously that is massive. And in my opinion, if you're not adapting as a company to that sort of individual agreements with different people flexibly and work-life balance, then you're just not going to keep up with the competition. And then obviously team culture and career growth, because that's just obviously given with data people always looking for the next best thing and to learn, basically. So yeah, anything you want to add there, Joel?
Yeah, I think it's no surprise when people hit the market that salary is the first question on their mind, because all we're hearing now is about data salaries going up. So yeah, everyone's going to be thinking, well, if I'm moving, this is a great opportunity for me to get that 20-30% jump, which is a lot harder to get internally within a business. There's some interesting stuff that we're going to hit on later around salaries and flexibility within the diversity piece. But the key thing here, and we'll talk about it in a moment in retention, is that the first conversation that we're having as recruiters and that most candidates are having with people is around salary. And it's not got the same stigma as before, where people would think in a different balanced market, they're always thinking, okay, what can I offer the company? Let's ask them questions around the culture and the work. With the power balance in the market having shifted towards the candidate, it means that they can then go, well, you know what, salary is important for me. That is my main driver, and it hasn't become such a difficult conversation for people. Just quickly from the previous slide, we had a question from Venkatesh just asking, does data science represent data analyst, data science, computer vision in all totality? We split data analyst out of that. I mean, I'll probably go to you more so on this, Emily, but for us, a data scientist is someone who touches upon building a statistical model. That is the kind of first prerequisite to kind of start talking about data science. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. I think the way we split it is analytics is sort of, basic, not basic, I shouldn't say that, SQL, a viz tool, and then everything else is a nice to have, and you're looking at data and interpreting what's going on and then presenting insights in whatever way or pillar in the business you are. Anything above that, when it comes to building a model from scratch, is data science for us, just for the ease of us being able to recruit for our clients.
Cool. Okay, great. So
I was also just going to, oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
No, I was just going to say it probably stems into the next part actually. But those key findings and drivers and stuff like that will go into the retention piece. But I suppose one of the key takeaways from that is that businesses need to be really, really clear on their EVP and based around these drivers, so that people are obviously clear, what the salary bandings are, what kind of environment you have, and what is the progression pathway and growth, which seems quite obvious, but it's really easily missed in this market, especially at this pace that we're going at. But we'll go into that now, I suppose, retention.
Yeah, exactly. And retention is, I think the key phrase, if you are a manager or within talent to take away from today, is that retention is an individual thing. We speak to so many different kinds of people, and you ask the same question to everyone and you're going to get a slightly different answer. So we've seen a lot of businesses input a lot of really great flexibility policies, benefit policies, but they're blanket policies, and whilst they may be good for 50% of the people who work for them, they might not actually be that great for another 50%. So being able to have flexibility around your flexibility policies and around your benefits and your EVP is actually the key thing that we're seeing at the moment. So what that could look like, so maybe you've got one person who needs different start times and finish times. You've got someone else who it's more important for them to work at home. You've got someone else who, is happy to do the evening work, whatever it may be. So flexibility is an individual thing, and an employee value proposition needs to be an individual thing. We're finding with candidates now that it's no longer, oh yeah, go and have a look at our benefits page on the website. People are saying, well, but exactly what benefit am I going to get? Is it, am I going to get home loans? If you're working for a bank, you're going to get money off there, or if you're working for a retailer, okay, I get discounts within store, but what actually is that? People have been much more descriptive on what they want from a benefit and what they need for their total package. But the key thing that's been coming up more than anything around holding on to people within the business, again, it comes to salary. And we speak about this every year, but more importantly than ever, Emily, that internal parity piece is the first question that you need to be talking about before you even go and try and hire anyone new.
Yes, I agree. And I know we were talking about this the other day as well, but the, I suppose, concept of, do you actually need that extra person in your business? Could you actually pay your current employees that extra however many grand, 150 grand across them, and then find someone more junior, so that you are retaining people by one, obviously, of those pillars. But that's obviously the most talked about and focused on at the end of the day, what we're saying.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's you've hit the nail on the head there. So say you've got budget to bring in a new senior engineer at $160,000 or whatever it may be, and you've got 3 people in the team on less money. You've got to think, well, can I split some of that money out, give each of them $20,000 pay rise and retain them, and then maybe, yeah, as you said, hire someone more junior and bring them in underneath, because the cost of losing your team is so much greater than trying to bring in that one person. And gone are the days of the, oh, well, we'll just go and get someone new to replace them. It's too difficult. So get that internal parity piece right, then start talking about flexibility. But it was funny when we had the podcast with our friend Dennis Jimenez, Emily, and he was saying we need to have those individual conversations with people. You need to approach them and say, hey, what do you need from us? What do you need from us as a business? What can we do to retain you? But then you worry as a manager that sometimes you're actually poking the bear and making them think, well, do I really want to be here within this business? But we'd always recommend to have that conversation and keep it out in the open.
Oh yeah, I mean, you're going into that with risk, of course, but at the end of the day, you'd rather know than not know, right? So it's always a question you should be asking, in my opinion.
100%. And look, retention, attraction, same things are coming out at the minute. 3 key things: salary, flexibility, working culture. So important. All right, on to the next. So this is the piece, and we won't go on into too much detail on this. I spoke about it briefly earlier around what are the career aspirations of data professionals. You've obviously got 40% of people there wanting to people manage and strategy manage. That's just quite simply impossible, right? You can't have 40% of the market being a people manager. So maybe something you can speak to, Emily, because we've been doing it a little bit here at Precision around what can you do to offer people that step into it without them maybe being a pure people manager.
Yeah, totally. There's like lots of good examples at Precision. I know there's about 3 of us that started at similar times, and 2 of us are taking management pathways. The other one's not quite as interested, but they want a piece of the pie when it comes to leadership in some form. So like what can you do to maybe like encourage leadership within teams, whether it be management, whether it be I don't know, leadership of projects, thought leadership, things like that are a little bit left field of just standard, I want to manage people. And then if you can't offer people management roles, then like how can you, I suppose, pave the sort of way to getting them there? Can you give them a person that's a bit more junior, that's, you know, mentoring and coaching and things like that, but actually lay it out with the person rather than just, you know, throwing them this, oh yeah, you could potentially manage someone or mentor someone, I should say here. It needs to be like set in stone, get them excited about it, like this is part of your growth and your pathway and things like that, you know, that go amiss sometimes.
Yeah, I completely agree. One of the things we've got mental health initiatives that are happening internally here at the minute, and one of our colleagues, Craig, is leading that, and he's bringing people into that as a project team, and you know that's been pushed forward within the business, and you can get the pieces you want from leadership without it being pure management, like you said. So that's a good point, Emily. Right, technologies. So one big winner this year, Snowflake, and we're not surprised. I mean, with data engineers being the key target skill set that most companies are looking for at the minute, and Snowflake being a tool that people seem to really enjoy using, that is no surprise. It showed up for the first time last year, and you can see it right there in the middle. And then Azure and AWS and the cloud tools are dominating within Australia and New Zealand, and we're seeing a little bit more GCP, and then Databricks, another big winner as well. So yeah, there are not really any surprises here, and obviously the machine learning side is more you, Emily, and a lot of people you speak to say, hey, how do I get into that machine learning side of things?
Yeah, I mean, like the only, I suppose the only tool that I see there all the time is Python, right? So it's like, if you're not using Python, you should be learning it because it is a lot better for pure or heavy data science, from what I understand. Don't quote me if you're a data scientist. But yeah, and then everything else, I suppose, is very agnostic, and in my opinion, and what I've seen from clients, if you've got, you know, one cloud tool, you can definitely translate to the others, and everything else that goes along with the data science toolkit, which I won't harp on about because everyone knows.
Good stuff. And the ones that popped up for the first time this year that I think will probably be growing next year are DBT and Data Factory. And I would suggest that maybe next year those 2 tools are going to be towards the Snowflake end of the market. So if you're looking to retain your team, there's some good advice on what technologies they might want to be out there using and learning. This is a slide we'll just touch on very quickly because nothing's really changed. Banking and finance, as always, top of the market, what people want to work within. That is seen as the most lucrative industry to be in. The one piece that we are hearing more about, health, is one that people talk about a lot. We're starting to have more conversations with people around wanting to give back, wanting to do something different with their career. And we're starting to have more conversations, well, Emily, with sustainability companies, green energy companies, and that's probably going to be the growth area of the next 5 years.
Yeah, definitely. And then also obviously consulting. Now, I feel like there's a real weird stigma around consulting in the market. It's a lot harder, obviously, when you get up the ranks because there's a BD component to the roles. But yeah, I'm interested to, I suppose, if anyone has questions around that consulting piece, it'd be interesting to know what their thoughts are. But it's really interesting because it's something that's, I suppose, got a negative stigma in my market as well. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is a lot of the mid-tier Australian consultancies have been working on some really cool projects. They've been growing out their teams. They've been doing really well and maybe presenting themselves differently to the market as the top end consultancies, as we'd call them, maybe the big four, and that's generated some renewed interest within the consulting industry, which is great. My concern always with that within consulting is those small to medium consultancies more often than not then get bought out by the big ones, and we go in that 10-year cycle within consulting of then people branch out again and set up and then get bought back in. But I'd say that's the key thing. I think the consulting industry took a good long hard look at themselves and said, hey, how are we going to compete within the market, whether it be the stigma around long hours and salaries. So I definitely think there's been a good change within that industry, which is nice to see people wanting to get into it as well because of the variety that it offers you. It's a great place to learn new skills. So I'd say that's probably why.
I agree. I also remember from another podcast with Shearer Saga, he was talking about that at the start when you're in your early days of your career to mid-level, it's really great to be a generalist, and one thing that can help is obviously going into consulting because of the variety and pace. So yeah, you're right.
Cool. Right, where could you put your team if they want to learn? So Udemy is a good set of courses that people seem to want to go to. We're working with a well-known retailer here in Australia, and they offer Coursera courses as part of their learning plans for their team as well. We're seeing a lot more people want to get certifications, so the Azure certifications, AWS certifications. So some good ideas there where people can go and learn, but apart from those that said they're doing nothing, the majority of the market are wanting to learn and doing something. Have you seen within your area particularly leaning towards one type of study?
Actually, no. I see a variety all the time, and there's not really like we always preach about this. There's not really like a number one course to go to. It's more about what you can apply on the job, and if you can get your hands on certain things that are on your job or in different projects and different teams, and it's more around like networking to get that piece of work to apply it rather than just to have the theory. So that's what I've noticed anyway.
Great. And then I think you mentioned Shearer before when we did the podcast with him. He's got something he called the LEAP plan program for his team, and that how important it is to have a quite set out learning program for your team. Do you remember what LEAP stood for?
Yeah, I think it was Learning Enablement Action Plan. I think that sounds about right. But yeah, he had a massive emphasis on the learning piece, and he also mentioned about his time spent. I think it was like 40% business, 30% meeting people, getting to know needs, 20% helping his leaders, and then that 10% of the time is learning for him. So obviously he's got his own learning plan and enablement plan. So that's also something maybe to watch out for if you are a candidate looking. Like, how is your leader holding themselves in the market? What are they doing to better themselves? Because you obviously want to learn from them as well. That's
a great question to ask within an interview, isn't it? Actually, think about it. You could ask the person you're interviewing with, what are you doing to upskill yourself? Because you're right, you want to learn from a manager who's developing, right? So that's a great shout.
Got to word it the right way though. Can't be like, so how are you doing? Yeah.
That's it. Right, okay, here we're going to get into the spicier section. So how did you find your role and what are you getting paid? So thank you for those who stuck around when they wanted to get to this section. But look, no surprise in a candidate short market that the most likely way of finding a role is through a recruiter, and a lot more companies are utilizing recruiters. The relationships that we're having within the market are very different now, which is great. No surprises on the direct application, but what we have seen is a massive increase in referrals. It almost doubled from last year. And I think that comes down to managers just really pressing their team, saying, hey, look, we really need people here. Can you get out into your network and help us out? And then on the right there, no surprise, if you're a contractor, much more likely to be finding your role through a recruiter just because of the payrolling aspect of that. So no real surprises there in that sense, but this is very, very important for people to understand. So how often people are approached and how often are people keeping their eye on the job market? We weren't too shocked with this, were we?
No, but it is always shocking because it's constant how many people are getting tapped up and potentially spammed, and like your team is hot demand, so it is kind of a scary stat, especially because it's jumped to 38%. Which is a bit of a change in my opinion, big change.
Definitely. So that's the weekly side of things. You've got 70% of the market are approached monthly. I had a conversation with the data engineer once, and he opened up his LinkedIn inbox to me, and within a couple of weeks he'd had about 140 LinkedIn emails. So if you're a hiring manager or someone in talent, this is so important for you to understand like how much certain subsections of the data market are being approached, and how much harder it is to then entice them in. So we, as recruiters, we've been trying to change. So one of the things we've been using more is a lot more video content. The relationships that we're working with our clients are changing as well, as we've said. So we're working a lot more exclusive and retained work, and that gives us the ability as recruiters to A, spend a bit more time on the role, but B, more importantly, try and produce some co-branded marketing material with our clients. So you might have the hiring manager on a 90-second video talking to the role that they're looking to fill and why someone should work for that company, so that you're standing out, that you're presenting yourself to the market in a different way, and in a much more open way as well. Salaries are more likely to be on job adverts from recruiters these days. So there's a lot that's going on, but yeah, the candidate pitch packs that we're using in the videos, anything else that I'm missing?
No, I was just, well, maybe the last point I was going to address was like that trust piece, because it's important you build, like, we're obviously in a relationship driven market, so anyone hiring or looking for a role needs to find someone. If it's not us, like, cool, that's fine, but someone that you trust, that you can build a relationship with, that's going to help you, that knows you, that you don't have to then trawl through these 140 emails, because some of them are just spam. Some of them haven't even looked at your profile, which is silly in such a candidate short market as well, because they're just shooting themselves in the foot, really. But there's a video actually on my LinkedIn and my featured content with Greg Savage, which talks about, like, basically his advice for people who are hiring, people who are looking, and also recruiters in the market, and what they should be, how they should be approaching it, basically. So I recommend reviewing that if you are interested.
Yeah. Good shout, that. And I'm happy to answer your question now, mate, because that is a good question that we always get asked around sample size. Obviously, once we've taken out the anomalies, and we always get a couple of people playing silly buggers with us. But yeah, we had over 500 people once we took all of that out. So statistically significant to within around 3 or 4%, as far as I understand. So whilst it might not be perfect, it's a good sample size. It's, from what we know, the biggest one in Australia. So but yeah, if you guys next year can pass this around your friends so we can get an even bigger sample size, that'd be great. Right, remuneration. So 2021 versus 2022. So some big things here. So firstly, across the board, on average, salaries have increased around 21%, which is a lot within a year. I think more importantly, and this perhaps is for hiring managers, is how few of the market are now earning under $100,000 a year, and that $100,000 is inclusive of super, just so everyone is aware. And only 2% of the market now earning under $80,000. So that's even the graduates and the juniors coming in are getting really good salaries. We've seen a doubling of those earning over 250,000, which is awesome. That's what we want to see. We want to see the senior roles within data going up. It means they've got a bigger seat at the table. It means that they've got more influence. So that's a very good thing. And finally, 63% of the market earning above 150,000 versus only 43% last year. So if you're entering the market with a role under $150,000, you just know straight away that only 37% of the market are going to be in that bracket, and those 37% are probably going to be wanting to earn a little bit more. What are some of the key things that you've seen around salaries and negotiations and chats that you've had this year, Emily?
Oh, so many. Great memories. No, I'm just kidding. There's been a big bunch of, well, it's been varied, to be honest, but a few stories. We've had people that market with extra money and have been like super astounded with how quick it's been to get someone through the door, but based on previous hiring needs as well. So that's really positive, because they've actually gone back to their revenue or operating offices to get that money before they go to market, before they get someone to final stage. Then I've had the opposite, which is very frustrating for everyone involved, because obviously undercutting people just doesn't give anyone a good experience. I mean, 60% of people don't actually accept someone of salary that is undercut, just due to bad taste in the mouth, bad experience. So I suppose the moral of the story is, like, perception and brand are everything, and you need to protect that as a company. So if you do need to do further legwork to get those salaries as a hiring manager, whilst you might not be able to compete with, massive banks because you just can't, sometimes it's just impossible, you do need to find what that real ceiling is for the perfect candidate, or the right candidate, I should say. I shouldn't say perfect. And then also we talked about this, Joel, like getting rid of ego as a hiring manager as well, I think was one piece that you were talking about.
Yeah, 100%. And just quickly, Alvin, this is for everyone, full-time and contract, but we've got some more slides coming where we do have a few graphs splitting it out a little bit, so we'll be able to show you some more detail there. But yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there, Emily. It's so easy to go through a process and think, right, we've got this candidate on the hook, they're really interested in us, let's just try and get them for, I don't know, $150,000 when they said they wanted 160 because now they're interested. You've hit the nail on the head there. When we've seen that, 60% of those people end up not moving forward, and the other 40% are still trying to negotiate up. And then it's just an ever-changing market is the short of it. As soon as a candidate hits the market and is active and starts interviewing, they're gonna most likely be interviewing elsewhere. They're going to most likely be speaking to other companies who are putting different salaries in front of them. And as a hiring manager, you just have to be able to accept the fact that the person that you want, who you a week ago wanted 150,000, now wants 165,000 because they've spoken to other companies at that level. And it's, it is what it is at the end of the day. And we found already that the key driver for people in the market is salary. So whilst all the other things matter, that is the conversation that we're having. Just before we go on to the next slide, have we got an average data rate for data professionals for daily? I do have that actually, Syed. I got it from my accounts team yesterday, but it's in an email, not in this presentation. So if you hit me up with an email afterwards, I can send through the average daily rate for a contractor.
I was just going to quickly say, I'm talking about harping on about hiring and hiring managers, but as candidates, I think the flip side, just on that note before you skip to the next one, is that it is really important to stay true to your word when you're talking to, I don't know, us or companies and things like that. And if it's changing, that's fine. It just needs to be expressed and communicated that things are changing as to why, because you're going to get put into that not so great basket of just assuming that you're trying to to changing and all that kind of thing, which you probably aren't. But I think that's a really key takeaway for candidates in the market is stay in integrity is the best word with what you're saying. If you can't match that and for whatever reason the goalposts are changing, communicate those two things.
Yeah, I can't stress that enough as well. Like you said, Emily, it's not the changing of the salary that people care about, it's the way it's communicated. You are bang on there. At the end of the day, we get what the market's like, and everyone does. So if something's changed, just say something's changed. And if the company that you're then interviewing for is really annoyed by that change and kicks off about it, then maybe they're not the right company for you, and that's fine too, right? But at the end of the day, in a market like this, we just need people to be honest and upfront, and it goes both ways, and also for us in the middle. I think you bang on the money there. Right, speeding through. So this is just last year versus this year. It's a really easy slide. We'll kick straight past it. It's just quite simply that you're more likely to earn more money if you've been in the industry longer. It's not really that much of a surprise. So sorry, actually, Louise, you were asking for this slide, so maybe I'll just stay on it slightly longer. But yeah, it's a little bit hard to navigate. But yeah, if you're in the industry longer, you're going to be earning more. Most people in management positions are in the industry for longer, hence that being what we're seeing with these slides. And yes, the grads are the ones who are most likely to be under $80,000, or it might be a couple of people who are part-time as well. Louise's question there. Right, moving on. Cool, so contract versus perm on the left here. So I think this was Albin who was asking for this. So again, no surprise that you're more likely to be earning more as a day rate contractor. That's one of the main, I guess, points to be a contractor, outside of the learning and getting perhaps more variety, is the earning potential within that. I think one of the key things that daily rate contractors really need to do, that some do and some don't, is to actually analyze how much you're going to earn throughout the year properly, because you're not going to work 5 days a week. every week of the year. So whilst you might be on $1,000 a day, it doesn't mean that you're going to be earning $365,000 a year. So that is to be considered. And then on the right here, we've seen a significant shift where at least half of the market aren't sure if they're being fairly remunerated. And I think that's just because of the fluctuating market that we're in. How to be happy with how you found your job, because we saw earlier that people find their new role in different ways. Any thoughts on this from your side of things, Em?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, well, we've got to iron out that direct application. I think was that through the actual company, right? That's what you're.
Correct. Yeah, versus applying on Seek
like,
or LinkedIn.
For example, Precision, you apply at Precision website. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot of that, obviously the recruiter thing is great to see for us, but and headhunts, and that's probably because we are one key thing we cover off really early in the process is salary, and a lot of those other ones are a little bit more cagey. You may not have the bracket or the range, whilst you're applying, maybe even till the last stage, which is kind of frustrating for some people perhaps, because you get to that and then it's 20 grand less than what you think. So those types of conversations, that's a sort of similar thing we were talking about earlier, is having them at start and shying away from that, I suppose, stigma, that negative stigma around salary, and talking about that, because it's part of life. We earn money to survive. So talk about it.
Exactly. Yeah, we as recruiters, we've been pressed heavily by the likes of Seek and LinkedIn to include salaries on our job adverts. So that's why you're much more likely to be walking into that hiring process with a better view of, okay, well, this is what the salary is likely to be, hence people being happy. And then, like you said, yeah, with recruiters and obviously with more contractors finding roles through recruiters, contractors are usually much more set on their kind of daily rate that they're looking for. You go into the conversation, here's my daily rate, $1,000 a day, whatever it may be. That's what you're looking for, and that's just much easier. Often it comes out of different budgets. So the direct application on the website often occurs because a lot of companies don't put the salaries on that website, and you're already through 2 or 3 stages before you've even been asked the question of what money are you looking for. So just something to consider whilst people are looking for their role as well. On to the next. We are onto my snazziest and heaviest slide, but hopefully, as most people on here are data people, it makes more sense. So we'll go straight to the bottom. As I mentioned, we're going to take data strategists off. We only had 4 people come through on that function, so we're going to change that one up and maybe drop it off. But I think no surprise around the management side of things, but it's data engineering where we've seen a really big shift. You've got over 60% of the market within data engineering now earning over $150,000, which is fantastic, and now earning more than data scientists. So,
yeah, I mean, yeah, we all know why, right? Like it's just so hard to find data engineers, and I think that's now the focus for a lot of organizations, and it should be, to get your environments right before you introduce anything fancy and exciting like algorithm building and modeling and stuff like that. So yeah, interesting to see. Be good to hear from data scientists how they feel about that.
And the most stable to be in, if you want to be, we've got delivery and PMs there, over 80% of the market earning over 150,000. We believe that is because a lot of project managers have reskilled themselves into the data world, so they've come in with quite a lot of delivery experience already. And then data governance being such a heavy policy and legal driven part of the industry, it does come with a little bit of maturity, a little bit more nuance, and it's a much bigger focus on change management as well. So you need that ability to influence, push and pull with data governance, because you can't just pop in a new data governance strategy and hope that everyone's going to adhere to it, because we all know that doesn't work. Good question from Kitty. Delivery, PM, product managers and owners in there. Yes, that would cover that side of things. We definitely feel like in the next year or two, data product managers will be getting dragged out into its own area, but we just haven't seen the huge influx of roles in that side of things as yet. Diversity. So first things first, same amount of split as last year. So 21% women within the market. And the only real change that we've seen here in terms of the types of roles is there are more women in contract roles than there were last year. We've seen that gap close quite heavily. The next slide, more importantly, is the one that we want to stick on a little bit today and talk about and make some assumptions, shall we say. But the disappointing thing, first of all, is it seems that the gender pay gap has increased. Now, we've got some thoughts on that, and I'll go to you first on that, Em.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, obviously not great to see, but I think what we've kind of thought about, and this could be completely wrong, so no one come at me for this, but perhaps women have been, the primary carers in the last couple of years. I don't know, they might have had kids, or they've just found that's their nook, for being adjusting to COVID and that kind of life. So perhaps their drivers have actually, or our drivers, I should say, have actually switched and have thought, what, if I can get flexible arrangements for me, my children, and my family, that's a lot more, I suppose, enticing or attractive than chasing the money, essentially. So that could be one point.
Yeah, because what we've seen on the right there is last year women felt much more unfairly remunerated than men, but their earnings were actually more close to what men were earning, whereas this year they're earning less, however are almost the same in terms of how fairly they feel remunerated. So we have made that assumption that it's because they're the drivers have changed, and that's what we thought is the assumption. But hey, we might be completely wrong and we might be going backwards, but we would hope not, with the amount of conversation around that piece as well. But we thought that was quite interesting to see. Right, we are coming towards the end now. Thank you for those who have managed to stick with us all the way through. Just into a little bit of remote working. So this was completed towards the end of last year into January. We think even in the last 3 months, 2 months, this has probably changed, but to see that many people working from home 5 days a week is still quite surprising, I think. But obviously within data, we have a lot of back-end roles, so it's probably possible. But where we're probably going to see the shift, Emily, is on the left there in next year's survey. We're probably going to see a lot more remote working, we would have thought.
I'm in New Zealand right now, remotely working. No, yeah, I think that it's been a bit of a draw card for a lot of companies. Even I've been speaking to people, clients in New Zealand, and their one thing is like, oh, don't forget, we actually offer remote working arrangements. Like, that's going to really help with drawing in talent. And in fact, it will be a massive attraction and retention piece, I think, for people that are joining the business, because A, you're going to have a bigger market to tap into, and B, I suppose it's just going to be a lot of people's drivers getting hit as well.
Yeah, perfect. No surprise here that 80% of companies looking to hire this year. We've seen that probably even increase in the last few months. But I'm going to come to you, Emily, because this is one of your biggest bugbears. We understand the reasons why fixed term roles exist. We understand that there are maternity leaves that you need to cover, paternity leave. But yeah, launch into it about fixed term, Emily, and your thoughts.
Oh God. Okay. Well, first of all, I mean, like 2% of the market. If you're not looking at that stat and being like, okay, cool, fair enough, then like, yeah, there's something wrong. Because it's obvious people aren't interested. It's actually I suppose the best of two terrible worlds. You're not getting that reward from contracting. That's like day rate, flexibility, the increase in salary, I suppose, to equate for the lack of leave and things like that. And there's a fixed end to it, rather than oh yeah, we could extend. So that's obviously tough. On the other side of the coin, with permanent, you're essentially most likely going to be leaving a permanent role, because, well, in my market anyway, because it's a lot more perm heavy. So to be able to leave and give 4 weeks notice for a 12-month contract, fixed term, is obviously a lot harder, because everyone knows stability is key, or has been, particularly without COVID, pandemic. Job security, things like that. So I suppose if you're looking at fixed term as an option, I would recommend recircling back around and thinking about other options to introduce, because you're going to tap into less people for sure.
And to introduce a couple of solutions, a 9-month daily rate contractor instead of a 12-month fixed term, perhaps a contractor who works 4 days a week instead of 5, because that would then level out your costs as well. Those are 2 good options. And then we would also say, look, if you're looking for someone for a 12-month fixed term position, invariably within that 12 months, more people are going to be leaving your team. and therefore that person is probably going to be there long term anyway. You're going to want to extend them. So if you can get that permanent headcount and hire. Now look, we as recruiters understand that companies have policies, different ways of working they can't get around. However, if you are coming to market with a fixed term role, then you're going to struggle. I'm just going to quickly go to a question from Daryl. From a salary perspective, do you see a lot of roles which split categories, and how do you see them remunerated? So for example, do some data analysis high level modeling with Excel and R, but wouldn't have the skill set of a data science hire? I'll come to you with that one, Emily, because that kind of is something that you do deal with, where how we split analytics and then also data science. So are you seeing some of those kind of in-betweeny roles, and how do they fit into the market?
Yeah, good question. I am seeing a lot of those, and I actually think they're really good roles to be recruiting, because you're going to have like one piece of the puzzle being you might have a progression and growth pathway for this person going into data science, but they may be just touching on bits here and there. So that's a really like good retention strategy, actually, if you're a manager and you kind of like, you don't want to oversell the role, but you have some really cool problems, and that sort of pathway is actually there for someone to develop and grow. So that's actually a really good retention strategy. I suppose when it comes to remuneration, look, data scientists who can build, recommender systems and engines that, there's not a huge lot of them, are going to get paid more, just quite simply because of skill shortage. But when it comes to the middle ground, I think as long as you've got that insights, that business facing communication piece that you can also deliver to the business in terms of value, and communicate it in a storytelling way, then you're going to be paid well, if you can showcase your value.
And would you see, we speak to a lot of data analysts, insight analysts who say they want to get into that side of things, right? So maybe a little bit more flexible on their salary requirements, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. As long as they hit the other drivers of, what they've said they want out of their career, right? So if it actually is, I've got a vision for this data science environment to get up and running by X date, and then the company and the manager communicate exactly what it looks like and get the buy-in from that person, absolutely.
Great. Right, just quickly with hiring processes, sticking to the split between contract and permanent on the right there, obviously contract processes taking less than 2 weeks, they have to be quick. Nearly 50% of people are getting their role within a week. On the contract side of things, the expectation is there that you're probably going to come with more references, a little bit more experience in the market, so people can move through that process quickly. But even for permanent hires now, over 50% of people moving quicker than 2 weeks, which is quite surprising, because permanent processes can take a bit of time. You're doing your due diligence, but what we're seeing is companies reacting to the market that we're in, and those who are moving quickly are, I don't want to say first dibs, but they're getting their first shot at people. If your processes are going over that kind of 4 weeks plus, then you're going to struggle to find anyone, because they'll have dropped off most likely in one of the quicker processes, as we can see. Final slide around some contract specific information for any contractors still on here. The key piece of information we wanted to get across here is that initial contract length is really important. If you look at the preference on the left there, very few people are wanting a 3-month contract up front. It's that kind of 6 to 12, even more than 12, because what people don't realize about contractors perhaps here on the right is if you look at how long they typically stay within a business, a lot of people over 2 years, 1 to 2 years. So if a contractor is happy and stable, they will stay, and that's something that can keep getting rolled over and over. Now we see a lot of that in government more than anywhere, right, Em?
Yeah, definitely, because I think arguably they go a bit slower, so maybe there's more work. No, I'm joking. But no, yeah, they definitely have a longer term, or they look at longer term contracts, but it sign them up for like 6 to 12 months initially, and then you can see them rolling on for like 5 years or something. So yeah.
Exactly. And look, if anyone's interested in getting into contracting, we've got Laura and Sam who are contract specialists. If you need advice on how to get your own PTY set up, just give us a shout. We can always help with that. So to conclude, this is who you are most likely to be if you are working within data in Australia at the moment. So working within either analytics or data engineering, it used to be just within analytics, obviously be male and be born overseas, now moving into that 10 to 20 years experience. between 150,000 and 200,000 per year, and the key drivers are going to be salary and flexibility. And that is us. So apologies for running a couple of minutes over. Any final thoughts from you, Emily, before we hoover up any last questions, if anyone has any?
No, I was just like, we always say this, but like, we're obviously tools ourselves in the market. So if you are interested in chatting further about this and like you want to actually have a conversation around the market, like we're happy to do that, even if you're not wanting to move roles right now. Like we're not going to force you into a role or anything, but we're more like advisors, and I suppose we like to be helpful and educational. So yeah, do reach out.
Yeah, we always say try and find someone that you trust. You know, we've helped many people who we're never going to be able to place, or companies that we're never going to be able to work with, and we're always happy to do that, because at the end of the day, what goes around comes around. So whether it's us or someone else that you trust, always have someone there as that sounding board. And if you are a candidate and you're weighing up a couple of offers and you're not sure which to take, give us a call and we'll help you through, and we'll help you choose, because obviously we've got a lot of insight into what's going on there in the market.